All right, it is time for a goals check-in and update. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm here today to do an update on my 24 in 2024, which is a series of goals that I set for myself in October of 2024 to work on with the remainder of the year, because I realized I forgot to make goals this year. Whoops. And normally I would start this by saying I'm super excited, but to be honest, it's a little hard to be super excited about anything this week. I just want to acknowledge the fact that the impact and the result of the American election is really disappointing, saddening, and surprising, to say the least. And I'm really feeling for my American friends. I'm Canadian, but we have an election in the nearish future, and it's not looking great here either. But I certainly don't have any. Like, I think sometimes, especially in the very near time afterwards, is not much to do other than be in the truth of what is. And I mean, and then once you get through that, then you start getting into whatever you can get into. I don't know, I feel like so many people have put so much effort into making a difference, and then to have this land like this, it feels so disappointing. But I feel like, you can't let that disappointment and discouragement lead to despair. I think that is the big challenge, and sometimes that just needs a little bit of time, a little bit of tweaking, and to be with what is, and then to move forward yet again. So anyway, I don't have, that's the best that I can do is words of advice, but I'm a Canadian, the first instinct is to always apologize. I didn't think I did. Did I say I'm sorry? It's not my fault, but it's also like, I'm sorry for what everyone's going through, because it's really tough times for people that are going to be gravely impacted and greatly impacted by things, and that includes a lot of people. So anyway, yeah. It's tough. It's tough. And it's tough to be excited about things. It's tough to be engaged. But, I mean, most of the stuff I did before Tuesday. So, and I did watch most of the coverage on Tuesday. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into it, because I know that can also be challenging for folks. So I'll just leave it there. I'm thinking of you guys. I acknowledge that it is a very disappointing outcome, and hopefully more change in the better directions in the future. I think that's important to keep that at the forefront as well. So anyway, again, I'm not, I don't have lots of wisdom in this realm of things, but that's what I got, and I'm thinking of everyone. So yeah, all right, let's get to what I got to this week. As I said, mostly before Tuesday. So one of the things that I did, and I haven't got any progress on this in a bit, and that was I read another graphic novel. One of my challenges is to do an A to Z of comics and graphic novels, and I got a V for Void Rivals. This is written by Robert Kirkman, and then the artists include Lorenzo De Felici and Matthew Lopez. This is, I believe I picked this up. I got this from Hoopla, and I think I picked it because I think it might be Transformers related. I couldn't feel that from reading it. I do surprisingly like reading media tie-ins, even if I have not had much, familiarity with the media. Like, sometimes I do, but I actually feel like I enjoy them a little bit more when I don't know the franchise that well. Now, I've seen some of the Transformers movies, and I mean, none of them are good. Like, I don't exclusively like good movies, but I mean, yeah. I remember when the first one came out, it felt so exciting, the first live action one, and then I was so disappointed. Anyway, but I couldn't really feel that from this, that it was Transformers or not, and so I don't know. Anyway, but it's set in space. There are multiple civilizations on different planets, and this one surrounds a story about two people who are in single-person spacecraft type things, and they end up sort of crash landing on the same planet that doesn't really have anything else, and they need to, or at least one of them wants to work together to get off of the planet. And then there's a bit of like adventure and intrigue because they're also from two sort of, I don't know if you would say warring planets, but they're definitely two planets that are, or civilizations or whatever, that are very aware of each other and have a very complicated, secretive history. So it was interesting. It was engaging. I liked the art. There was a lot of interesting characters. One of the things I like about science fiction is like it could be anything. Like you could be encountering, like I didn't understand any of the systems or planets or different races or anything, like, and I didn't need the context, because I don't always need that context, especially when I'm probably just going to only read this one volume, but and none of it was confusing, but I also didn't understand it. So it's just, that's a bit of a weird way to fit something, but I'm just reading it because I'm just trying to get back into reading comics and graphic novels. I'm trying to remember if this one was Image. I think it was Image, and I think I've definitely read a fair amount from this author, which makes me want to make sure that I'm like branching out a bit more, but right now it's just about getting back in the habit of reading. So this is fine. It took me a couple weeks to read it. I am not doing the math on the fact that I've read 2 out of 26 and where we are in the year. Still definitely possible I could get to all 26 letters of the alphabet, but at this pace, maybe not. So anyway, but one more read and one more letter down. Onto some movie stuff where I actually did make a fair amount of progress. I did not do really great in watching, especially like scary stuff up in lead to Halloween, but I got some in sort of after Halloween, the weekend after Halloween. So, but what I ended up watching over the past week included the Quartermass Experiment. Note the spelling, it starts with experiment. There's no E there. This is a Hammer horror sci-fi thriller about a rocket that goes into space and then needs to be remote controlled back, I think. Or it's a rocket that comes back to space from space. And then there's, stuff is a bit strange and different. They have to figure things out and what happened and what didn't happen, and drama and intrigue and stuff ensue in a sort of science fiction realm of things. So this is actually, after reading the Wikipedia page, it's actually a Hammer horror remake of a BBC miniseries. And it sounded like the BBC wasn't super keen on Hammer horror picking up their series and adapting it because they would make it more like shock value. Now this is from like 1956, so for us now there's not really much shock value here. There is some social commentary, sort of, and it does, there is some, and it does have some vibes of sort of like Frankenstein, War of the Worlds kind of stuff, but generally speaking, it's a sci-fi mystery intrigue type thing. Like, it's very close to like a detective thriller type of thing, and Quartermass actually refers to the sort of lead scientist on the rocket experiment, or the rocket launch, and they seem to have quite a wide berth in what they are or are allowed to do in terms of the different agencies like law enforcement and the fire department and stuff like that. So it was interesting. It was actually the right pace for the right time, because I wanted something sort of like creepy but not too actually scary, and so that ended up fitting the bill, but I imagine the BBC production was a lot better. I imagine. So this is one, I can't get it good. This is sort of the vibes of it, very sort of almost noir-y kind of vibes to it. So, it was interesting. I also watched, and this one I looked it up on my spreadsheet several times because I'm like, have I seen this? And not after I've seen it, but before I've seen it, because I kept on feeling like, oh yeah, I should watch that, but I've probably seen that. And then so I know that I had to check several times to see, had I actually seen it? And I hadn't, so now I can include it in my, new to me film seen this year, and that is One Missed Call. This is by, Takeshi Miike, it's a Japanese horror film from 2003. We got a lot of Japanese horror films at this particular time, and in particular, we got a lot of them remade in the States. So, like, this is around the time of The Ring and The Grudge and, what was that? There's so many. Shudder, I think? Pulse. So there was a lot of them around that time, I don't know, I don't even think I've seen the remake of this one, and I think it might just have been an accessibility thing at the time it came out. Maybe it just wasn't in theaters around me, or I'm not sure, or I just wasn't going to the theater as much. There are years where I went to the theater a lot, and 2003, we probably would have gotten it in 2004. I wasn't going to the theater quite as much. Anyway, so One Missed Call, Japanese horror film. The premise here is that so this is early days of cell phones, so like flip phones and generally a digital screen that's mostly numeric, but some fancy ones might have like a very, very blurry photo kind of situation, camera phone situation. So nowhere near what we're using now. But anyway, so this follows some mostly college age people, and there's like sometimes people will get a mysterious phone call, and then several days later something really, scary, tragic will happen. And so it's trying to figure out the mystery of that, sort of. The thing is with this one, I think I was like partway through this movie and I was watching it. It was very engaging, very captivating. I was definitely like, I was curious and suspenseful and all of those things. Interesting characters, good tension, and it has that sort of like ramp up of tension where like you kind of know what's gonna happen, or you kind of know that something's gonna happen, and then that when that something happens, it's kind of like a relief kind of thing. Like it has, it's horror. Like horror has its own pace and it sort of used that pacing really well. And I haven't watched a movie sort of like this for quite some time, where it had that sort of like, although a lot of it is very like hitting all the right beats, those beats work for a reason. You know what I mean? So I appreciated that. There was a couple of things in here that were quite disturbing though. But partway through the movie, I was kind of wondering, because I wasn't sure, and this has happened to me before, whether or not I had seen it or not. And then I'm always worried about like, do I, at like 75% of the way through, am I going to like know what happens, like know the answer? And I was thinking about this one, that the tension and the atmosphere was so good, and I was wondering if we were going to get a definitive resolve, and if I needed that, or if just this creepy atmosphere was enough. So it was an interesting question. I'm not gonna like say whether or not there was a resolve, because I think that can be a bit of a spoiler. But I thought it was well worth watching. It stood the test of time. It's kind of wild that this is now from 20 years ago. And there are some things like with the technology stuff, I feel like because, I remember when these were the phones that people had, I didn't worry about that. But we did have a surgence of sort of, we have this, I think, with almost any new commonly known about or accessible technology. We get a slew of horror movies that play to it. So like, but this idea of like some kind of phone call, like, there's when is it, from the 70s? The movie from the 70s of, oh geez, I can't remember what the name of the film was. It centered on a babysitter that kept on getting mysterious phone calls. And it's just like, that's still technology, technically. Anyway, so the suspense was good. The story was good. Some of it was quite disturbing, and maybe worth trigger warnings, checking trigger warnings if you need to. But mainly for me, this was about the pacing and the tone, and actually getting to see something from like, a sort of micro niche like that sort of, I guess that's sort of like 99 to 2006. We got a lot of films, and to getting to see one that I hadn't seen and then also enjoying it was quite nice. So that was good. I also watched another missing link. This is a big missing link for me, and that is Phantasm. This is from 1979. It's a horror movie, I guess. I don't know. With the title, it kind of always feels like is it going to be fantastical? Is it going to be supernatural or paranormal? I mean, I don't know if I want to answer that question. This was, to be honest, this was not what I was expecting at all, and yet it was kind of exactly what I expected. So this is from 1979. It is, I imagine it's sort of more of a cult classic horror film, and it is, yeah, it was not what I was expecting. It centers on two brothers who look so much like Han and Luke that it's not even funny. Like, there's such a Han-Luke dynamic between them. It's not, and their haircuts are very Han and Luke from Star Wars, and that makes sense because this is like 2 years later, but like still. And so it's two brothers, one who's like 13 and the other one I think is 24. I don't remember if they said his age, but he's 24. And they live in, and then there's something mysterious going on in one of the neighboring businesses, and so and it's got the whole sort of like, is something happening, is something not happening, are you going to believe me, why aren't you believing me, oh, are you going to now, like it has that sort of like disaster movie kind of dynamic to it, but like with two brothers, with a younger brother and an older brother. But then like some of the directions this one goes, I'm like, wow, like what, like what is, I don't even, like I literally don't understand what I'm seeing on the screen. And then that was extremely graphic and gross, and that was so bizarre, and that was completely obvious, and of course they have to have some of that because it's a movie from this time. And then like just like all over the place. I will say that it had some really interesting visual elements, great blocking, like so like the art direction at times was really fabulous, and like some of the effects were pretty good, but the story and the acting and the writing, I guess story and writing are kind of the same, but like they're different, but not great. Not great. Like there was literally some things that I'm like, oh, you can't do that. Like, you can't. Like I'm like, my grade 7 English teacher told me that we were never allowed to do that when we write a story. So I kind of to see it in an actual motion picture feels a bit surprising. And then and then again, some of the acting was just, I mean, and some of the effects were not great. Some of the effects is like, that's just someone flailing their arms around. Like it's not, there's nothing actually going on here. But I mean, and then sometimes it was just like, that was a lot of exposition to just get us to the next point. But some of the other stuff was really wild and really out there. And some of it does not hold the test of time. There was some language, there was one language reference that I'm like, oh, we don't say that. And then there's another one that I'm like, I don't think that's how we talk about that anymore. But it is from 1979, so this is from quite some time ago. So I don't know. So definitely that's why I feel like it's probably a cult classic as opposed to like, I mean, I'm sure it's influential. I'm sure a lot of people saw this at an age where it really influenced the type of horror that they liked. But, you know, there's almost no female characters in this, and they're there to serve a particular purpose, and that's about it. Also not terribly, well, no, we got a lot of films in the 70s that didn't fall into that necessarily, but horror is, unfortunately, a genre where that is the case a lot, even still. So I don't know. I am glad that I finally saw it. It was not really what I was expecting. I don't even know if I rated it on my spreadsheet yet, and I don't even know where to start, because it's like some of the ideas fascinating, some of the art direction fascinating. Overall, not sure. And there was a lot of back and forth that was like, you know, aren't you gonna believe me? Like that kind of stuff, or, you know, don't do this. And then like, of course they're gonna do that. But some of that we just get in horror anyway. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure what to do with that one at all. And then next up, and this is actually probably gonna be the last thing I can talk about because I do have something in the very, very near future. So I'll talk about this and then some upcoming videos, and then I'll catch up more in the next video. So I also saw Madam Web. This is with Dakota Johnson. This is not what I expected at all, because I had just seen the sort of description of like a paramedic or ambulance driver, or like, well, she's technically both, starts to have a sense of things to come before they actually happen. So I thought this was going to be some sort of like paranormal, psychological thriller kind of thing. It is not. It is based on a comic book character in a probably familiar universe. It's a Marvel comic, I believe, but it's not. And then when I saw the web, I'm like, oh, are we supposed to, like, is this an offshoot of a very popular comic book character, but not part of the MCU? I don't know. Anyway, I ended up enjoying this one a lot. Dakota Fanning plays the character as described, but then there's all of these different elements that I wasn't expecting. There are a bunch of teen girls that she sort of has to like find and I don't even know. And there were some things that were just like ever so slightly disappointing for me in this one. But generally speaking, I liked that this had a lot of female characters in it. And I really liked her character a lot. But there were also some things that I felt like that wasn't explained really well. And I do want to go look up on IMDb or YouTube to explain one particular part of it. Because I'm like, I really feel like I didn't understand that. So, but it's also like a personal journey film. And I thought her character was really strong-willed, opinionated. Well, I don't know if opinionated would be the right way to phrase it, but I felt like she knew what she wanted, and it wasn't the same as everyone else, and that was fine. I do feel like they pulled back from that a little bit, but she also, but part of that is because it's sort of a personal journey film, and for me, part of that was a little disappointing, but I understand why they went there, and it kind of made sense of the story, but still, it was like, So, anyway, I did enjoy it. I thought there was some really good, like, character stuff in it. I thought it was an interesting story, one that I was completely unfamiliar with, I just really enjoyed it. And I feel like it's not, like, it came out this year, did not come out to much buzz, and I don't know how connected it is to other stories or if it really is its own story within, but I am glad that I watched it. I'm glad that I picked it. It was quite a win for me in terms of a lot of the things that I look for in film, and so I really appreciated that. So I am going to leave things here. That is a little shorter than I would normally go, but as I said, I have something coming up that was not at the time I expected. I do have some videos coming in the future. I have another Journal With Me video coming out on Sunday, and I did do a Draw With Me video, which I think I will release on Tuesday. I'm not sure what the best date for that is, and I don't know how regular those videos will be, but I'm really, really happy that I got to one, and I think I was a little too, well, anyway, I'll just leave it as is, and I need to think about, I just sort of like had the energy to do it, so I did it, so it wasn't hugely planned. So now that I've done one, I think it's worth looking back and seeing, okay, where do I go from here? So the Draw With Me will be up next Tuesday. The Journal With Me will be up on Sunday, sorry. And then another update probably next Friday. So I'm trying to figure out what the best schedule for me is, and we'll see. But yeah, so that I guess is mostly what I read and what I watched, and I will add in the other updates in my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon with another video on Sunday. All right, take care.